It has been dubbed the largest human protest in history. Like wildfire, it has sparked international outrage, grabbing the front pages of local and global news. It has transcended gender and socio-cultural lines. Diplomatic relations have not been left out either. Even your favorite celebrities have had something to say about it. The Indian farmers' protest. What are the facts and the underlying issues? Sit back as our distinguished panel gets to the root of the issues. Welcome to the IFAMA Young Board Discussion Series.
Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are, and welcome to the first IFAMA Young Board Discussion Series. IFAMA, which stands for the International Food and Agribusiness Management Organization, is perhaps the world's largest food and agribusiness organization with membership spanning 50 countries and 6 continents. We pride ourselves as a global clearinghouse of ideas, and the IFAMA Young Board Discussion Series is one of those. We would want you to sit back as we start this very engaging and educational discussion today. So I'll turn you over to our moderator for today, Melissa van der Mauwe.
Thank you, Rioba, and thank you for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. I see 2 of our panelists have not joined us yet. So allow me to do some introductions and then also allow me to do a brief summary of what we've seen happening in India and perhaps also give a little bit of background about the food systems in India. So just as by way of introduction, my name is Melissa van der Merwe. I'm South African. I'm also the secretary of the IFAMA Young Board, and I will be your moderator this evening or this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you find yourself. I also have my colleague, Richard Agetu. He's going to be moderating the chat. So we welcome everyone to make comments, ask questions, and also engage with the panelists as we continue. If you want to add something to the discussion based on the questions that we have prepared for the panelists, please feel free to do so in the chat. I will be crossing over to Richard from time to time to make sure that you also enjoy this discussion. So allow me to share my screen for a moment. Great. So by way of introduction of what we've seen happening, I would just like to share a few slides with you. At the beginning of 2021, journalists reported on almost 200,000 farmers from the northern states of India setting up camp in and around Delhi to protest the 3 laws that was passed by Prime Minister Modi's government in September 2020. So these are drone footages that you can see from Delhi. So you'll see quite a number of farmers that gathered together to protest these laws. To set the scene for this panel discussion, I would like a few minutes just to summarize these laws that was passed so that we have a bit of context. But before I get into these laws, I think it would be best to first explain the food marketing system in India so that we have some context on why these farmers are upset because of these laws specifically. So as part of the solution to the food crisis that India faced in the 1960s, India developed a nationwide food marketing system to support the agricultural industry by ensuring fair prices. So this food marketing system starts by farmers bringing their crops to the local wholesale markets. And in the local language, these markets are also called mundis, where these farmers then sell their crops to traders through open markets or open auctions rather, with transparent pricing. And these transparent prices are often informed by the minimum support price or MSPs, which is a government guaranteed price that serves as a benchmark even for crops sold outside of these mundis. So there's always this benchmark price for crops that are sold. So these crops then go to a secondary market and to be stored by buyers before they are then sent out for future sales. So the 3 laws that caused this uprising was the first, or actually deregulates different parts of these food marketing systems. So although some of the states in India have already moved away from this marketing system, these three laws was meant to deregulate this food marketing system on a national level. So these three laws deregulate specific parts of this food marketing system. The first act creates free, unregulated trade spaces outside of the wholesale markets, or these mundis, and this ultimately creates two parallel markets with very different rules. So you'll have one market with oversight, that was the former mundis, and then you'll have another market without oversight. So a type of free market, if you want. Then the second law, or the second act, created a framework, or creates a framework for contract farming deals. So according to this act, any business agreement would be strictly between the farmer and the traders. So there will be little oversight or little intervention or interference by the government. These contracts will be solely between the trader and the farmer. The third act affects a different part of the chain, and the third act eliminates the storage limits that was previously set by the government to control the prices, and it would ultimately allow anyone to stock up on these products if they have enough funds to do so. So those are the three laws that was basically passed and that caused these uprisings. So against this backdrop, the IFAMA Young Board decided to host this discussion series, The Indian Farmer Crisis, X-raying the Underlying Issues. So I think we should commence with the scan or the X-ray scan of these underlying issues by having a discussion with 4 of our uniquely qualified panelists that we've invited this evening. We have Aman Bali. He is an author, a history enthusiast, and an activist following the farmer protest in India, and he's also writing a book on the agrarian crisis in India. We also have Vijay Sardana. He is an authority in techno-legal commercial matters who specializes in agribusiness and food health. So he'll be able to give us some insights on contract negotiation, mediation and arbitration, and intellectual property. So we have a legal expert in the house. Then we have Raj Vardhan. He has over 25 years of experience working in multiple emerging markets in different parts of the international agricultural value chain. So we'll also talk a little bit about how this crisis impacted our actors beyond the farming sector, so moving down the value chain. And then we have a very esteemed TV journalist, Sahil Murli Mengani. He's a news reporter and an anchor, and he has 11 years of experience in TV journalism. So we'll also hear how it was on the ground and how he found the protest unfolding. So having said that, let's jump straight into the discussion. As I said, we have some questions prepared for the panelists, but you're more than welcome, again, to, if you have questions, post those in the chat. We have Richard keeping an eye on the chat, so please feel free to engage. Feel free to introduce yourself. If we have some panelists or some participants from India, please feel free to also introduce yourself and give your views on how things are on the ground. We have many international participants as well, and we would like to hear how it is in India, and if you have first-hand experience, please share that as well. I just want to check that we have all the panelists. Ed, are we still missing some panelists?
Yeah, we're waiting for Aman and Sahil. So we're still trying to get in contact with them. And I think they're having difficulties joining, probably because of network problems, but we'll get them on.
So do you want me to continue?
Yeah, continue.
Okay, great. Perfect. So we have Raj and Vijay. So we have a supply chain expert and an emerging market expert, and we have a legal expert in the house. So let's see how we commence with this. So Vijay, perhaps let me start with you. Perhaps you can give us a little bit of a view based on your experience on techno-legal matters. Some view these laws as a way to increase the competitiveness of the agricultural industry in India. What is your view on this, and do you agree?
First of all, greetings from India. Namaste from India to all the viewers and the participants of this discussion. Let me correct some of the historical facts about Indian agriculture markets. In 1960s, India was deficit in food, and we had a problem with the Chinese, war with India, and there was a serious food shortage in the country. It was decided by the government of India by that time that we should have a special focus on self-sufficiency in food. So in 1962-63, after the Chinese war, this was a priority for government of India. Idea was that we should introduce high yielding varieties and modern farming technology to boost the production. When this was introduced, then government of India realized that if we increase the production with the new technologies, sudden inflow of material will crash the prices, and farmers will not get the right price for their even inputs. So next time they will not support the government's initiative in food production. That is why in 1964, Government of India created two bodies. One was Food Corporation of India, which is a public sector unit, government body, responsible for procurement of food grains, mainly wheat and rice, to ensure public distribution system. So it's a difference there. Marketing does not exist per se. It is basically a procurement and distribution. It is not marketing. So we have to be a little clear on those issues. And then there was a commission for prices, which was created basically to decide how much we should pay to the farmers. And that was not a reference price for the market. That was the price for at what price government should buy. So there are a lot of confusions in that when we talk about MSP, that it is a public price or it is a price which is for the private sector. No, it is not the price for the private sector. It is a price at which the government of India should buy for public distribution system, basically to support the poor people in the country for their food security. So this clarification is very important, because then the discussion can be, in a very confused scenario. Starting from there, now coming to this protest in this part of the world. These protests are happening 1 kilometer from my house. And so you can say I'm virtually giving you a live telecast. So what is happening here? These protests are a unique protest in the world in a sense. If you see the history of agriculture protests were happening against increase in taxation, increase in cost of food production, acquisition of land by landlords and other exploitative societies, or some other policies which were putting restrictions on the farmers around the world. This is the unique protest where farmers are protesting against liberalization. Farmers are protesting against choice of the market and how to decide the consumer. Farmers are protesting what they were demanding from last 40 years, that please give us an alternate market, because these regulated markets have become cartels and we are not getting fair price, and we are also not having any opportunity to sell outside to any buyer, whoever is willing to pay us more. So this is very unique protest which is against freedom, which is against choice of freedom, which is against where you can decide the price, and which is against where you are saying that you also have an option to go for contract farming in case if you want. So that is the peculiarity of this protest. Now, when you are talking about scale of the largest protest, These all are, if I ask you the picture which you have shown, about 200,000 people from satellite imagery, where the police and the enforcement agencies were regularly monitoring the crowd was never more than 40,000 to 50,000 people. That is from the satellite mapping by the police and everything. So we have to bring the context, because the good part of the whole law is, in the country, if you read the law, this is one law in the independent India's history where no policy maker interventions are required. It is the law which says you are free to decide what you want to do, except one segment of the society which has a negative implication, that is commission agents, or we call it middlemen. When you say that farmers are free to sell even outside agriculture market yards, and there is no need for buyer or seller to pay any commission to anyone, if you read the law, the only segment which has a negative impact in the law is the commission agents. Now, how these protests have started? Because if you go to any society and say that my commission is lost because of this law, there is no public sympathy. Unfortunately, because of illiteracy among the farmers, the stories were created that these laws will confiscate your land, you will lose your land rights. So farmers got agitated. You will lose control of your crop. Farmers got agitated. Corporates will come and occupy your agriculture and land and all your assets. Farmers got agitated. And this agitation then started and pumped by a lot of political interest and vested interest. And farmer name per se has a big sympathy in any society. So in India also, people, those who have not read the law, thought that these laws are against farmers without reading, and started supporting the protest without knowing the facts, even without. And this has started creating nuisance value in the whole society. Let me put that way. But as you realize that as the message is spreading about the facts in the law, because these laws were debated in the parliament, if you go and see the 17th September 2020 debate in parliament, you will find every party, every political party participated and nobody objected to the provisions of the law. After that, also in various parliamentary discussions, there was discussion. Not a single person was able to tell which line or which section of the law is against the farmers. Everyone is saying withdraw the law, but nobody is telling which line or which section of the law is anti-farmer or against farmer. Now, in a democratic system, if you start changing the law under political pressure or under muscle power or by ganging up the people, you cannot run a democracy. Then every other law can be changed like this, and there is no meaning of parliament and democracy in the society. That was the stand taken by Government of India, that we are willing to talk to you all. 11 rounds of meeting happened with all the farmer representatives. Okay, give us the line which you feel is not comfortable or anti-farmer. But as I mentioned to you, that when these laws were passed on the 4th of June 2020, the same farmer leader, those who are protesting today, came on record in media that our 30 years old demand is met by this government. We are extremely thankful. But as we know that, then politics takes over, vested interest takes over, and this whole thing became a farmers' agitation, which is actually started by middlemen and commission agents. And then everyone jumped into it for various political reasons and various considerations. So this is the background in which, let me put the facts together. Even many of the audiences, these laws are on the internet. Please download, read yourself, and tell me which line of the law is anti-farmer, and it will be great contribution for this international forum for Government of India to look at it, that these laws should be changed or modified accordingly. So this is the techno-legal analysis, or let me say the commercial analysis of the whole debate. And that is what I'm trying to say, is that this is for the first time the protest is against freedom. A protest is against freedom of choice, and protest is against a law where there is no defect is projected by any affected party that which line is bad. And that's why this is a unique protest. And when you write the history down the line after 5 years or 10 years, which I'm also documenting for my book, I'm documenting statements on a daily basis for my book. And you see that other than law, everything else is discussed in politics. So this is the background I think we should keep in mind when we are taking this discussion forward. Back to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Vijay, for that summary of the politics that we might not understand that's happening on the ground. Raj, perhaps let me cross over to you and sort of let's take this to the food side and the farmer side. I don't know if you can perhaps talk to the opinion of the value chain and how they perceive these laws, and if you agree with what Vijay was saying. And then we'll cross over to Richard to see if there's some action in the chat.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are logging in from. Really happy to be here discussing on this issue. This is an issue which is close to a lot of people, and people can tend to be emotive, and therefore it is important to understand from an agriculture perspective what is happening, and to keep that in mind. Politics will have its own agenda, but the whole idea this day was to uncover underlying issues and understand where does agriculture fit into all this. Now, the question you asked me, Melissa, was from a value chain perspective, and my co-panelist Vijay was talking about one of the parts of the value chain are the mandi operators. And the mandi operators, now this is not a regulation which came just in 1950s. Actually, the APMC market laws were established 150 years ago by the Britishers at a point of time when they wanted to procure raw cotton in India. And that's when the APMC market system was formulated. They didn't want people selling cotton outside the mandi system. So you could sell cotton only into the mandi system. And that was the genesis of the APMC market. APMC stands for Agriculture Produce Market. Okay. And then slowly in the 1960s, when we had the issue, Vijay elaborated on all that. There was a focus on the Green Revolution and encouraging production, and all that, impacted in food, increasing of food, and India becoming from a food importing country to becoming a more self-sufficient country. Now, a lot of regulations which were formulated were done in a point of time when there was a scarcity. Now, coming back to the value chain, people who are impacted by the laws will definitely participate. So who are impacted? The APMC mandi operators are definitely impacted because theirs was a more monopolistic kind of an arrangement where farmers could only sell through the APMC market. Now, I want you to understand, what does it mean? The MSP price that Vijay was talking about is on paper is meant for 22 to 23 products. But practically, it is only applicable for rice and wheat. And it is not mandatory. It is the guiding price at which the government of India will buy. So nobody else in India needs to buy at MSP, above MSP or below MSP. What gets determined? The price is determined on the basis of demand and supply. If there is a shortage of supply and there is a high demand, prices will move up, and the converse is also true. Just like agriculture produce is determined anywhere. So if you look at the value chain, with the farmers, the APMC mandi operators were definitely participating in this. There was a token strike by the truck owners because the trucking system is what is moving commodities. And they were also, sympathetic towards what the farmers were raising as an issue. But that was a very short token kind of a thing, because the farmers also were moving the truck owners were also moving other products, and business had to continue. So those were the ones which are directly impacted or thought they were getting impacted. At least the truck owners is not going to be a long-term kind of a thing. Whatever happens, commodities will move. Now, if you look at the value chain, rest of the value chain, who's getting impacted? Are the food producers really getting impacted? The food producers are really not getting impacted because, as I told you, the MSP is more relevant for agriculture produce like grain, which is rice and wheat. And they can also, they are already in touch with APMC markets and they're buying from the APMC markets. And nowhere in the laws it says that APMC markets will stop buying. Now, that was one of the fears that the farmers have, that, the APMC markets will stop. It will not stop. APMC markets will continue. Now, what the new rules are saying is that besides the APMC, there is an alternate. So there is an optionality for the farmer where he doesn't necessarily need to go through the APMC market. He can also sell to a private enterprise. And this whole APMC market was, the whole procurement was in the hands of the government. And now the government is creating a broad base by these laws by saying that, okay, private guys can also come in. Now, the private guys are coming in, they're coming as a part of the value chain. They benefit from this. There's no reason for them to protest. So if you see, how is it negatively impacting other people in the value chain? It is really not, because it's good for the farmers. It creates more options for the farmers to sell. It creates more options. So even if you look at the entire agitation, it is mainly in and around Delhi. Not mainly, it is around Delhi. It is essentially farmers from two states, Haryana and Punjab, partly from UP, who are participating in this. And slowly it started off with a lack of understanding about the regulation and the fears about the regulation. I think soon it has gone into, it has political undertones. I don't want to get into that. I would really like to, keep my discussion on agriculture and let walk through what are the agriculture issues underlying all this.
Thank you, Raj. I also would like us to try and stick to the agriculture and the food value chain as far as possible. So I have one or two more things that I would like you to elaborate on, but I saw Sahil on. Welcome, Sahil. If you can switch on your video in the meantime, and then I would cross over to you. I just have one or two more things I would like Raj to elaborate a little bit on. So Raj, you mentioned that these protests are sort of isolated towards the northern parts of India. So when I read up on these protests and where it came from, at some point I read that there is some states where these markets have been deregulated, and the statistic shows that these farmers are some of the poorest farmers in India where these markets have been deregulated. So is that as a result of the deregulation of the markets, or is there another reason why these farmers are the poorest compared to where we still have these markets?
Okay, Melissa, let me give you examples of, commodity boards, and you will understand the African context. Commodity boards have been responsible for determining price and determining what price farmers can sell, and have been responsible for buying from the farmers. And this is true of the entire West African commodity boards. And the farmers were not doing very well under the commodity boards. It was only once the commodity boards moved on did the farmers started getting in, private enterprise exports started, and they started getting better price realization. Even in India, you had the coffee board, which was buying the entire coffee and was controlling everything. And then it was decided that it is not going to be the coffee board. So you have so many examples here. And somebody was mentioning that, APMC markets in Bihar has closed, and because of that, farmers in Bihar are not doing well. I haven't seen any factual statements to that effect, but a, generalization which is being thrown. I think Vijay wants to make a point on that.
Vijay, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think what Raj is mentioning is important. Please appreciate when we talk about value chain and value creation for the farmer. The biggest challenge, if you look into the typical Indian society today, this system is existing against which the farmers are protesting from last 50 years. The classic example is that in last 50 years, the Indian average small farmers remained poor, whereas the commission agents became the richest people in the villages. Now, what this indicates that the share of consumer prices. If sitting in Delhi, I am paying $1 for vegetables and fruit even today, the same day, if I ask, a market which is 20, 30, 40 kilometers from Delhi, for the cauliflower, I was paying $1 and farmer was getting 2 to 3 cents. Now, this is what unfortunately was happening because the whole system became mandi system, or we say market yard system, which is a regulated market, and people, those who had licenses, only those people can trade. And what is happening when you have a restricted entry of the players in the market, chances of cartelization happens. This is a very classic example. So when consumer is paying $1 and farmer is getting 2 to 5 cents for the same thing without any value addition in the same raw material, means cauliflower to cauliflower, then what is happening to remaining? When we ask this question to the protesting farmer leaders, they have no answer. So when we ask this question very openly, that when you are interested in farmers' welfare, we have to create a system where maximum consumer spending should reach the farmers. And that can only happen when farmer and consumer comes face to face or closer to each other, reduce the people, those who exploit the value chain because of cartelization, or I always say that legalized cartelization, because these are licenses issued by the government departments. So once you are giving alternate to farmer, then sitting in Delhi, if I am a five-star hotel or I am a processor or I am a restaurant owner, even as a consumer, if I am willing to pay even $0.50 for the cauliflower, farmer is getting $0.50, his income goes up, my expenditure on the cauliflower goes down by half. So both are benefiting, consumers are benefiting, farmers are benefiting, because this almost 80 to 90% of commission, or I will say that overheads between consumer spending and farmer, was virtually siphoned off by various people at various stages. So one end consumer was suffering, on the other end farmer was suffering. And this is what the whole thing is, because it is a big money involved. That's why there is a big protest by people, those who had a negative impact because of these legal reforms. So we have to keep this context also in mind. Now, another point which is important when it comes to value addition in India, food processing industry was not coming up for a simple reason, because even if I want to work with the farmer to increase the quality and productivity, I was not supposed to buy directly. I have to go through the same cartelized route, and it used to be auctioned in the mandi, and only then I can buy. So what is happening is that, why I'm saying this, because I was running food processing company. I used to buy 200,000 tons material every year from almost 100 plus market yards. So this was a big challenge, and that was the reason that why Indian food industry never came up. Our exports never got a good recognition because of quality challenges. Farmers never got a technology because I don't know who is selling to me. And farmer never produced the quality because they never came in contact with me, because they don't know what quality I need. So this ecosystem was totally opaque. All were operating in independent directions, not communicating to each other, and people in between were exploiting the system because of seasonality, demand, supply, and many other factors. So this is the complex scenario, and it varies from crop to crop, region to region, season to season. So this factor we have to keep in mind.
Thanks, Vijay. Idioba asked to quickly also respond to something, and then I would very much like to cross over to Sahil, please.
Thank you so much, Melissa. We really appreciate the engaging nature of this webinar so far. This is actually what we envisaged. We appreciate the fact that we're having a lot of questions and interactions on the chat feature, but I just want to quickly point out something. IFAMA is not a political organization. As we said in our introduction, we understand the very emotional nature of this topic, but we just want to quickly say that our goal in doing this is to be able to see the two perspectives on this issue. I just want us to be very clear about that. And that's why we tried as much as possible to have a balanced panel. Mr. Sahil will be joining very soon. We're glad that he could make it, because We had a lot of technical issues, but that's been resolved. So please be free to express your views, but just quickly know that we do not have any stance on this. We just want to hear from both sides. Thank you.
Thank you, Rioba. So Sahil, just as a little bit of background, we gave a brief introduction of what we saw in the news happening in India. Then we talked a little bit about where India came from in terms of food history and agricultural history from the 1960s up to now. And then we talked a little bit about the 3 laws that is aimed at sort of liberalizing the food marketing system as it stands now. So perhaps if you can just give your views. I mean, we've seen quite a lot of these farmer protests between 2014 and 2018. I think the news talked about more than 1,000 of these farmer protests. So your point of view, what makes this one so much different from the others? And just also your opinion on this. Do you think the farmers really have a foot to stand on? Do you think the government is in the wrong? What's your views on that?
Thank you so much, Melissa, and also Richard, who has been trying his level best to make sure that the technical glitches were ironed out. So thank you so much for that. Melissa, to your question, with regards to the fact that there have been many protests, and you're right, over the last few years, and I've been covering agriculture, particularly farmers in India's villages, India's rural belts since 2012. And I've covered various farmers' protests. I've also covered agriculture on the ground in India's rural belt. Let me just give examples of some of the recent farmer protests which took place in India. In the year 2017, farmers from Tamil Nadu came all the way to India's national capital, traversing a journey of over 1,000 kilometers. And they camped in Delhi and did some of the very unique things just to draw government's attention. They ate mice, they ate their own shit, just to be able to get media's attention and to get government's attention. And they failed both at that. Then in the year 2018, I remember anchoring a news bulletin on a lazy Sunday evening at around 9 p.m. And suddenly farmers in Maharashtra decided to do an overnight march. Tens of thousands of farmers decided to do an overnight march from Nasik to India's financial capital, Mumbai, and they did so. So to say that suddenly farmers have farmers' protest has erupted, or the anger of farmers has erupted, would be unfair. And as you rightly pointed out, there have been many protests. So why is it that this one has struck a chord? This one is on the verge of completing 4 months, despite Indian media's biased coverage, pro-government coverage, and all immoral steps that have been taken by the government of India to despite all the odds. Why is it that farmers' protest is going on and is increasing in terms of intensity? I've been covering it on the ground, not just since November, but ever since September, when first leg of farmers' protest began. It's been spreading ever since then. Every move that's been taken, every immoral move, let me add, that's been taken by the government of India has backfired, and I'll come to that in just a bit. So why is it that it's spreading like wildfire? And the reason why I think is that in India, which is a country of 1.3 billion people, an electoral democracy, there is only one thing that matters: numbers. Indian citizens, Indian media, and also the government only understands, everyone in India just understands the language of numbers. And in farmers protest, we have seen numbers increasing with each passing day. We are seeing drone visuals of kilometers and kilometers of tractors and trolleys and other vehicles used by farmers parked at Delhi borders, particularly Singhu border and also at Tikri border. We are seeing camps increasing. Now they are being made into permanent structures as well as India gets into a summer mode. So one thing is the numbers. The numbers are increasing, and the imagery, despite attempts by the former mainstream media, as I call, because television India is losing the grip on India's issues and the reality. And that's why I don't call it mainstream media anymore. But there is resonance in digital media. There is resonance among in the work that's being done by independent journalists, and people are getting to see, those who want to see it with open eyes, they are seeing that the numbers are increasing. And that's why it has struck a chord. That's why the government has also been forced to do an 11 round talk with the farmers, which remains stalled for over a period of 2 months now. But earlier that wasn't happening. So that is one. B, we have seen even in the past, be it in 2017, as I said, the government did adopt certain measures just to end the protest that happened in the year 2017. Even in 2018, there were some dialogue sessions that were done. There was barricading done even in the year 2018 when farmers marched to India's financial capital. But the barricading and the measures adopted were not so fierce. And that is my point number two. The more you try to trample a protest, I think only two things can happen. Any protest that has happened over the last 3 to 4 decades in India has ended either when the government has agreed to listen to the demands of the farm or of the protesting community, or it has ended with a crackdown by the government, a brutal crackdown by the government. And that's been the precedent in Indian protest history, especially of the last 20 to 30 years. But another possibility that is there with a crackdown and a fierce crackdown by the government is that it could backfire and it could further anger the community which is protesting. And in this case, uh, agriculture directly employs 40% of India's. It is the largest employer, so to say, in a way. So it angered a lot of people when they saw uh, government digging up roads just to stop farmers from marching to the national capital, when they saw the kind of barricading that was done even on November 26th when the farmers' protest began, the usage of water cannons, usage of tear gas shells, that really angered the community of farmers. And so the more government kept trying to trample it down, the more the anger grew. It's like a pressure cooker valve. Earlier, it was allowed when they were allowed to express freely, they did so and they went back, and hence it was forgotten in a week, in a day. But this time, the crackdown was so fierce that it just led to it boomerang. So that's point number two. Point number three is the significance of the location where it all started. There is a history of residents of Punjab or members of the Punjabi community having fought long battles, armed as well as peaceful movements in the past, where they just don't accept any means of oppression. Whenever they are met with any mode of oppression, they give it back. That's in their blood. They fought many armed battles. That's in their heritage. That's in their culture. So when they met with that kind of resistance, they said, we are going to take it head on. We are not going to go back. We are not going to get intimidated by India's pro-government, anti-citizen national media. We are not going to get intimidated by the government or the measures adopted by the police. In fact, one of the first images that really went viral on social media was of a farmer from Punjab on November 26th when the farmers' protest began. Haryana police in India, opened water cannon and tear gas shells on the farmers. And the farmer took that very heavy stream of water on his chest and he didn't move an inch. That was a very symbolic image. That was a very symbolic image, and it in a way sent out a message to the government that they are not going to budge. So for me, that is reason number three, that this time the government has messed up, I think, with the wrong community and with the wrong state. It's in their blood to fight what they see as oppression. Now we can debate whether the government is right, whether the government is wrong. I've been in touch with the farmers. They have absolutely no second thoughts about the fact that the government is wrong, not just in terms of bringing the farm laws. And if you give me opportunity later on in the discussion, I'll tell you why they exactly say so. But they also feel that the government has been wrong in the way they have dealt with it. And hence, it's now become, the movement has now taken various angles. It's become a movement which is against farm laws. It's a movement in which farmers see this as their best opportunity to get uh, something that they have been asking for years, and that is minimum support price, MSP. They see this as an opportunity, not just to get the newly implemented farm laws rolled back, but they also see this as an opportunity where farming community has been put together like never before in numbers, in terms of intensity, in terms of emotions. They now see this as an opportunity to even get the MSP legal guarantee that they have been asking for years now. I've been covering it since 2012. Whenever I go to a village, I ask farmers, you want loan waivers, you want subsidies, what do you want? And they always say that these are good things. Surely we welcome any support that comes in from the government, but just give us the minimum support price for a produce, and we actually don't need anything else 10 years from now. So they are seeing this as an opportunity for that as well. So these are various reasons why it's been spreading. I'll come later on to other points as well, but I want to hear what the other panelists say, and I also want to take in some more questions that you have, but just wanted to set this into perspective, why it's been growing. And according to farmers, the government has not just been wrong in getting these farm laws, but they have also been wrong in the way this has uh, that the government has dealt with farmers. And another reason that I wanted to give why this has spread is because it is taking new turns. I think a protest starts with a certain set of demands and then it evolves. When it stops evolving, I think the protest dies. In this, it has evolved. It began with a protest, as I said, against farm laws. Then it also saw this as an opportunity to get their long-standing demand of MSP. And now it's also become a movement against various ills that are facing Indian citizens on their face. And I think the number one threat that really India is facing is a kind of venom that's being spread by India's pro-government, anti-citizens, national media. And this movement has also taken that color, where there are big banners of Indian editors, Indian news anchors, Indian journalists, at farmers' protests, where they are portrayed as dogs with the government, with the string of that dog in the government's hand, where they are portrayed as evils because of the kind of language they have used for the farmers, anti-nationals, terrorists, so on and so forth. And now it's also become a movement against India's national media. So it's evolving. So that's point number 4, with which I would like to rest my opening remarks.
Thank you, Sahil. Thank you for also sharing a bit of what you've experienced over the years and these with these farmer protests. So after listening to what you've said, it seemed like there's been many rounds where there was negotiations or farmers tried to negotiate. And with this, I want to cross over a little bit to Raj on his views on this. So we haven't really heard anything in the news on what these negotiations entailed. I mean, you mentioned that the farmers would like, the MSPs, but I need to play a little bit of devil's advocate in this. Is the MSPs only for smallholder farmers? Is it available to all farmers? And then also, I mean, there's also a flip side to this, right? So the MSPs sort of guarantees a minimum price. But if you guarantee a minimum price, doesn't that sort of push down the prices? I'm just thinking about, is this does this protect the small farmers, or does it also protect the larger farmers? I'm just trying to get a grasp of, is it big farmers that's fighting for these MSPs, or larger farmers that's fighting for these MSPs? And to sort of try and understand what the recommendations was that they tabled in these various rounds of negotiations with government, because I find it difficult to think that a government would not support the smallholder farmers and support rural development and support alleviation of poverty and support the sort of growth of the farming communities. Raj, perhaps your views on that.
So, Melissa, that's a very good question. And that is possibly the heart of what you're trying to uncover here. When the whole protest started, it started with the 3 laws being formulating, and right after the laws were formulated, the protest started. And it was possibly lack of communication, lack of understanding about the farm laws. And like Vijay said, that there were 11 rounds of discussion. And there was not a single clause which they came up with, which said that, I have an issue with this particular clause, or this needs to be amended. And right from the beginning, or anybody who is in agriculture will tell you that, it was very evident that this whole thing was about MSP and not about any of the reform laws. The reform laws just became an excuse. It was the MSP. And why is MSP important? Now, just to reel off some numbers, between Haryana and Punjab, 15% of the rice production, those 2 states account for. They account for 28% of the wheat production of India. Okay, so it's a big grain bowl. Both those states put together are a great grain bowl. But if you look at the MSP procurement, remember MSP is what? He mentioned the Food Corporation of India, FCI. When FCI is buying food on behalf of the government for the public distribution system, they are the ones who are using MSP. 22% of rice and 65% of wheat procured by the Indian government is contributed by these 2 states. So far more than the production, they are contributing to the state in terms of giving them the produce. Now, what is happening is the MSP in the 1950s, it made sense because we wanted to be self-sufficient, and therefore the government had to assure farmers that as long as you grow the crop, we are there. And we are there to buy the crops for you. However, this is not 1950s. Now we are not importing food. We are self-sufficient. Not only are we self-sufficient, there are huge societal costs. Now I'll come to the societal costs later on. First, let's just talk about the MSP. So there is a Swaminathan report which has been tabled, which talks about only 6% of the farmers of India are able to sell their produce on MSP. So the question you asked me, Melissa, is this about general farmers? No, it is not. It is farmers, and there is enough story of when you talk to the farmers, they're talking about how in the mandi system, they go and buy cheaper grains at a lower price from, let's say, Bihar and Bengal, and then go and give it to the government procurement system. The traders go and buy it, the mandi operators, and give it to FCI in Punjab at an MSP price and just make an arbitrage value. I don't see anything wrong with that, because there is always going to be an arbitrage, and it is for the markets to self-correct. As long as the markets are not completely controlled, there will be a self-controlling mechanism. People will understand. As long as information is, equally distributed amongst all the players. Now, coming to the societal cost, what is the societal cost? And this is something that I see in the entire conversation completely missing. The fact is that India supports 18% of the global population, and the water resources, freshwater resources that India has is only 4%. And every Indian will tell you about stories that they have, just even last year, where trains of water were being sent to different states. Chennai, which is a big city, didn't have any water. And you always have this crisis in India, which is of fresh water. And about 78% of this fresh water is all used by agriculture. Now, big chunk of the fresh water is rice. About 3,000 to 5,000 liters of water is required for converting 1 kilo of rice. Now, imagine what is happening. You're making MSP because you're giving guarantees. There is excess crop of rice. Just to reel out some, numbers, in 2020, in just the first 10 months, and this is while COVID is happening, India had exported some 11.95 million metric tons of rice. It is not only the second largest producer of rice, it is the largest exporter of rice. Can you imagine the crime that we have? People don't have water to drink, and we are exporting fresh water in the form of rice from India. And a bulk of this rice was of low variety, non-basmati. About 7.6 million metric ton was non-basmati rice which was being exported. There are top 3 locations in the world which the World Bank has identified as water hotspots. There's one in China, there is one in the US, but the number one is the Punjab-Haryana belt. That what the farmers are fighting is they don't even realize the cost is, forget about anybody else. It is first going to hurt their communities, their children, because of what you are doing to the water depletion over there. Not only water. If you look at the pollution, you talk to anybody who's staying around NCR, because of the amount of rice and wheat which is happening, and they happen in close conjunction, people have been burning crops because they just don't have time to shift from one to another. And that's creating a hell lot of pollution issues in the NCR region. So much so that Delhi today is one of the worst cities to live in the world because of the pollution. And all this is because of the free will that has been provided to the farmers to keep growing, and there is no quantity linkage. So it made sense historically when MSP was introduced and there was no quantity linkage. But now is the time where you cannot let this be laissez-faire and say, okay, you can keep growing and we'll keep buying, because it's creating a hell lot of problem. Government has to put in, much more than what is required. It is buying. It does not have the infrastructure. 30 to 40% is going into food wastage. So you're putting money which you're not able to use. Nobody is using that. Infrastructure is short. So there is a whole lot of societal problems which people have just not, in the entire debate, people find the emotive issues to connect with, because that is something which comes, obviously up front and center. But to look at, while it is advantages for the few farmers that we are talking about, look at the price that the society is paying for this as a whole. You have to look at the balance sheet and see, does the balance sheet matches? It just does not match.
Thank you, Raj. It's a tough one. In South Africa, we've seen the same happen as you've mentioned, and now we sit with a situation where our small farmers don't have market access. So we have market access problems because we don't have these markets anymore that's open and free for them to access to sell their products. So it's a tough one to get around. Vijay, you want to make a remark? Please go ahead.
You're muted, Vijay. We can't hear you. You're
muted.
I don't know from the way in which location my friend Sahil stays. I'm staying 1 kilometer from the venue of the protest. I invite him when he says that miles and miles of tractors and people are living there. The fact of the matter is, 3 days back, the Delhi police have even opened the road which was blocked by the farmer because there's nobody there. So what I invite him, there's no fun in arguing. I invite him, let's go and have a cup of tea at the same venue, and let's meet the farmers if we can locate any. That is one. My point here comes up is, look at the cost, which Raji has mentioned, very, very important. I have done some calculations for you. See, no doubt that farmers in India are under distress. Let's accept the fact. There's no argument on that. Because there are 40-50% of families live in rural India and they need financial welfare, and we have to consider for them. That's why the government of India, step after step, is trying to take steps that how we can uplift them. So no denying at any level that farmers need help. That's acceptable. Point here comes up is there are two ways to extend the support to farmer. Either you pay the taxpayers' money in the form of a subsidy, which around the world rich countries can afford. Second option is that consumer pays for the farmer's price. That is what we, as I was mentioning to you, that I pay in Delhi $1, my farmer gets 5 cents. And this is fact. So my point here comes up is that there are different multiple approaches we have to keep in mind. Now coming to the point is that what is the economic cost of this farmers scheme which farmer protesters or leaders are asking for? The Food Corporation of India, which is buying at MSP. See, our requirement as a peak reserve requirement of India is around 41.12 million ton in case of emergency rationing, even to distribute to public distribution system. You know what is the stock we are holding even today? We are holding 80 million tons of food grains in our stocks, and there is no taker for that. In value terms, it is $46.5 billion of India's hard-earned taxpayers' money is rotting in godown, consumed by rats and insects. Can India afford this policy? That is one aspect we have to look at it. $46.5 billion equal to total tax revenue, excise tax revenue, which India collects. The total tax revenue of India is 3.31 lakh crores, or let me say about $45 billion. And my $46 billion is lying in godown, and this year's procurement season is yet to start. It means before the season is starting, I'm already sitting with 2 times the inventory. Now, political leaders and some of the people, those who do not understand and not in the welfare of farmers, are saying government should buy everything at MSP. If I do that, I will need another $200 billion to meet their demand, which is almost 50% of India's total budget, tax collection of India. Moreover, this is, I'm saying, material value. If you include the handling cost, which ranges from, I have done the calculation, from 26% to 31%. It means for 100 rupee material, I have to spend another 30 rupees, or for $100 material, I have to spend another 30 rupees to procure, stock, and distribute. It means 100% taxpayers' money or total tax collection of India should go only for procurement. So factually is that this is not feasible by any standard. And this is what we are trying to convey to our farmer friends, that your demand is not practical. That is one aspect. This cannot be met by any political establishment, any government, irrespective of political party, color, creed, or whatever you call it. So your demand is economically unjustified, unviable. We have to accept this fact. Moreover, when it comes to that, I'm talking now issue of efficiency. Tell me which part of the world spends 31% in handling cost of raw material. Is in Africa, in America, Latin America? Worst of the countries may not be spending 31% just to handle $100 material. I spent $31. What we are up to? We are running one of the most inefficient public procurement system in the world. Why it is inefficient? Because of full of corruption. Why it is people are protesting? Now look at classic thing. And this is which is people have to, economists have to understand around the world. People, those who are protesting against these reforms, are actually the people, those who are the maximum beneficiary of this most inefficient system, not the farmers, the commission agents. They exploit, they do manipulations, they add extra water. You know what is the non-edible portion in the procurement? 14.5% official. And then they seek relaxation to add more things which are non-edible. Read the FCI report. What I'm saying is, people may say I'm talking in air. Go to Food Corporation of India website, download the quality standards, download the costing. It is all audited as per Government of India auditing system, because that's a constitutional requirement. You will find all facts. No hypothesis, no assumptions, no fake reports. All are on public domain. Somebody has to download and read it. I have done that. Calculations for you all from those, all those papers from there. So what I'm talking is from the facts. Now coming back to the other point is that what is the way forward for farmers? We have classic example for farmers' welfare. Farmers have created cooperatives. Classic example is dairy business. Farmers came together, and we all know the definition of cooperatives, because in market we all understand. We are management association. We know that people, those who have bargaining power, always make money. Those who do not have bargaining power don't make money. We have to improve the bargaining of the farmers. Now, this bargaining power of the farmer comes from two sides. Either they come collectively or they have a choice to choose where to sell. So these laws gives both options. You can form groups as FPOs, cooperatives, they all will be treated and benefited as farmer category. The law is very clear. You come together, form groups, and 100,000 crore is allocated to support their infrastructure requirements. So improve the farmers' bargaining power. They earn more directly talking to farmer instead of going through all these middlemen and corrupt systems in the process. Second, if you don't want to come together, law also gives you option to choose. Go directly and sell your product. If I'm buying at $1, come to our place, set up your shops and do it. And this is what the most of the new startups are doing. The educated farmer kids have started taking these laws as a new entrepreneurship opportunity. That why I should go through a cartelized route, why can't I sell directly? Those kids have taken initiatives, and you will find emerging stories every day in different parts of the world. That please see that how this is prospering. The only sad part in the whole thing is from the beginning, there is a controversy in last 6 months, COVID plus controversy. We have not moved the way and the speed at which we have moved for the benefit. This all disruptions has delayed the implementation. And now government has said to the farmers that if you still have a problem, come back to us. If you feel these laws are bad, we are willing to sit with you for 6 months, 1 year, sort out your issues. These are for your benefit because this is the only law which gives you choice. Every other law puts restrictions. This is the law which gives you freedom, and you are protesting, which you are demanding from 30 years. So this is, I think, where somewhere we have created confusion for by various vested interests. It is going to take time for a simple reason because of huge illiteracy. And that is what I'm saying. Our friend was mentioning large number of tractors and everything is on Delhi roads and encircling Delhi. I'm staying 1 kilometer from the protest site. I invite any one of you, come and let's go and see there, walk around and see what is the ground reality. So I think what is important today is that read the law. It is on internet. Download and read it, please. See how the procurement system is working, why it is so inefficient. All data is there. Role of middlemen and cartelization, how much consumer spending is reaching the farmers, who is pocketing the rest of the money. All these things are facts. We have to study that, and then it will be great if any suggestion can come from any part of the world, how we can improvise the system and efficiencies in the agriculture marketing system for the benefit of the farmers. Back to you, Malay.
Thank you. Thank you, Vijay. Yeah, I think, I mean, if we just think with our economic hats on, it's not a difficult situation or difficult decision, but unfortunately, we also think about people's livelihoods, and then things get a little bit difficult because we still need to try and support these smallholder farmers for the greater good. I mean, we have the same situations in Africa. It's not as easy as saying we need to think with economic hats and not think about the societal impacts. Sahil, I want to cross over to you, please. Your views on this, especially in terms of the various negotiations that there's been. I mean, Vijay mentioned now that the farmers often don't have bargaining power. So I'm wondering if the farmers feel that they have bargaining power to bargain with government. I mean, ultimately, this is what it boils down to. They need to bargain with government. I mean, and if it's a bunch of small farmers, I'm not sure if they have the bargaining power. And then I also want to talk a little bit about the illiteracy that we've been talking about. I mean, if it is true that a lot of the farmers are illiterate, was any steps taken to explain to these farmers what would be the repercussions of these laws, and then also how to handle it and what it actually means? So I would like to hear your views on that, please.
Okay. Before I respond to that question, I would very quickly like to respond to Mr. Vijay Sardana's comment, because he said, I invite you to farmers' protest sites. Well, I'm not sure which media Mr. Sardana has been consuming, but I call it Godi media, which is pro-government. And they, of course, have been showing that
I stay there. I don't consume,
died.
Sahil, I stay there.
Okay. I didn't interrupt, Mr. Sardana. I didn't interrupt. Let me just complete my point. So just for Mr. Sardana's benefit, I'm not sure what blinkers he's wearing, that despite staying so close to farmers' protest site, he is somehow not being able to see the kind of images and reality that I've been seeing. As I said, I've been reporting from ground, from those protest sites, not just from those protest sites, but from the state of Rajasthan, state of Uttarakhand, another big state of Western Uttar Pradesh, from Punjab, Haryana, and the visuals and the numbers are for everyone to see. And I'm going to show you some images, which is a documentary proof. And I'm sure Mr. Sardana believes in documentary evidence, and this is verified stuff which I can vouch for the authenticity of, because I have put it out on my Twitter timeline and in several reports that I've filed. This is today's image from Tikri border. Melissa, I'm not sure what is the number that is taken, and I'm not sure if it is visible, but I invite everyone to visit my Twitter profile and they can see these images. This is Ghazipur, another border, packed. And this is today is Friday, Wednesday's image. This is Rajasthan's Shri Ganganagar district. I'm not sure if the brightness, are you able to see the numbers? Are you able to see the faces? I'm not sure if you are able to.
No, we're not able to see, but I think we'll visit your Twitter page, Sahil. So we don't have a lot of time left. So I really want you to comment on
all right. So the point that I wanted, please. All right, the point that I, sure. So the point I wanted to make about this was, maybe when you keep seeing a protest from one particular narrative, you also end up not seeing the numbers. So the point is completely incorrect. The numbers are rising. The numbers are rising at Tikri border, rising at Ringo border, and the protest is spreading in Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, so much so that elected representatives of the ruling regime are not even allowed to visit their constituencies. That's the kind of unpopularity that the ruling regime, especially the state governments in these states, are enjoying, and it's only growing. So that's the fact of the matter. It's good, bad, ugly. That's not for me to say. But to your point about the bargaining power, now farmers say that currently, and I'm talking about these protesting farmers because I've been speaking to them. They say that as far as our bargaining power is concerned, currently, whatever the system is, we are happy with it, because we have seen what happens in the state of Bihar, another big state of India, which has been perpetually in a state of poverty. So much so that the Mandi system, the APM MC system that we have been talking about, was discontinued in the state of Bihar. And farmers of other states who are protesting right now tell me that ever since that was done, the state of those engaged in agricultural activities in that state has gone from bad to worse to dismal, so much so that those farmers have now turned into laborers, and they now travel to states like Punjab and Haryana, predominantly, which is participating in farmers' protests, to work as laborers in those farms. That is the state of poverty in that state. So they say the system that you have abolished in that state and the system which continues in our state, and now you want to abolish, create an alternative in front of which the current system would not be able to sustain, would in the years to come be like Bihar, where our richness will go away. Currently, we are happy with the current system. And the reason is that we are able to actually do bargaining with arthis, the middlemen, or the different terminologies they are known with. They say we cannot do bargaining with the corporates, the mighty corporates. And we know the kind of corporates are involved in this, and their tendency to monopolize the entire sector. And once they are in a state of monopoly, they have the government in their pockets. They are funding the governments through electoral bonds, which is a very shady way of funding governments. And South Africa has a history of how protests have in a way been waged against oppressors. Farmers say that in the current scheme of things, they see this as nothing but handing over their perfectly run system to a bunch of corporates who have everything in their pockets, who have so much money that they can buy out governments, they can buy out the police, they can buy out anyone they want to. And once they are in a system where, in the name of giving alternatives to farmers, once they are able to demolish the current APMC Mandi system, they'll be so powerful that they are not going to listen to farmers, that they are going to dictate terms with them, and the farmers will not be able to do any bargaining with them. It's as simple as that. And another panelist pointed out that that farmers have so far not pointed out what's wrong in the farm laws. Come to the government and tell us what is wrong. So to that, farmers say that they have done so. In 11 meetings, they have given detailed charters as to what is wrong with the farm laws, and they often give an analogy that when you buy a new system, let's say you buy a MacBook, you buy an iPhone, or you buy a washing machine or a dishwasher, when you buy that, if there is one technical problem with it, you're going to get it repaired. You're going to get the spare part replaced, depending on which country you're buying it from. But you're going to get it repaired. If you have two things wrong, maybe the switch is not working, you're going to get it replaced. But if there are hundreds of loopholes, if they see nothing working in it, then they say that please repeal these laws, put this into dustbin and sit back with us, involving us, engaging with us from the scratch, and let's together build the laws. What is the problem with that? And because the government has been hesitant to give into that demand, they clearly see this as a nexus between the governments and the corporates. And there's been a tendency of erosion of freedom of speech in India, erosion of several rights in India, which makes them even more suspicious. And because the government has adopted high-handedness, using its puppet media, what we call as Godi media. Godi is essentially translation of lapdog media, where media channels are now sitting in the lap of the government, showing all that the government wants to show. And that's why many people like Vijay Sardana are misled into believing that the farmers' protest is ending, because that's what the media keeps showing. If at all they show anything about farmers' protests, it's only because of independent journalists, it's only because of independent digital journalists, which are funded by people, that the reality of farmers' protest has been reaching people of India. And more sectors in India are realizing that they are not happy with the way things are working. And that's why you're seeing now even the trade unions joining hands, even joining hands with the farmers' protest. And on March 26th, we are going to be seeing a big nationwide closure of not just malls, shops, but several other facilities in India, where all the unions are now coming together, and they are saying that one by one, these laws are being brought without taking us into confidence. They say that not a single round of discussion was held with any of the protesting unions. Now, how can you come up with any sort of laws without even involving them in the discussion? Now, here the panelists said that, well, this is good for the agriculture sector. That is good. I am willing to respect their years of experience. I'm sure they have studied international models, etc., and they have formed a very informed view. But think from a farmer's perspective, there is also the point about literacy. They may be illiterate in terms of conventional educational structure. But let's agree, I think everyone on this panel would agree that no one knows agriculture better than a farmer. We'll agree to that, right? So according to them, they know agriculture the best, better than me, better than you, better than anyone on this panel. And according to them, the laws are bad. So who would you listen to? The experts, the pro-government media, the government which has brought in the laws, the corporate which stands to benefit, or the farmers who think that we are going to lose? So in this case, I think farmers are the most literate on the subject because they are on the ground. They know what the farming is. They know what their demands are. They have seen what's happening in Bihar. They have also seen what's happening in US, for instance, where the government continues to subsidize farmers heavily. Since 2012, whenever I've gone to India's villages and asked a farmer, do you want a loan waiver? Do you want subsidy? They said, all is good, but please give us minimum support price. And minimum support price is not that you can't go above that. You can. That's why they want a legal sanction to that. And they don't want MSC according to the old definition. They want C2 plus 50. So there's going to be annual correction to that. They want a guarantee. If you can give them a guarantee, then they are willing to still contemplate whether farm laws are good or bad. Right now, they are saying that these laws are going to take away the dominance of the mandi system, which they have trusted, they have tried and tested, and is going to position corporates in a position of monopoly with which they are not going to be able to bargain. And then there's going to be no legal guarantee of the minimum support that they have been asking for years now. In that situation, they will have nowhere to go. They can't go to media because media will not show their grievances. Human rights, again, has been the NGOs and sectors which are actually working for people, the downtrodden, the oppressed, they are one by one being closed, or they are being forced to close. whom are they going to go to? So that's the kind of situation the farmers are in, and that's why they have now vowed. And Mr. Sadana, just today, a farmer told me, a senior farmer, and by senior, I don't mean in the hierarchy of those just taking decisions, but a 103-year-old farmer. Melissa, 103-year-old farmer told me today that no matter what, he's not going to go back home unless and until these laws are repealed, even if that means that he has to breathe his last at the protest site. 300 farmers have died so far, and the media has been mocking the farmers. The media, the news anchors have been laughing at them, calling them anti-nationalist terrorists. That's become the template of anything in India. Anyone who disagrees with the government is now an anti-national, a terrorist. That's the discourse which also needs to be put into perspective when we talk about anything which is being brought right now and which is being backed by India's rich. Anything which is being backed by India's rich needs to be taken with a pinch of salt today because of the kind of violations we have seen in the past. But that's a debate for another day. But just to sum it up, I would say farmers are afraid that their bargaining power will go away. To your point about illiteracy, I think there is no one more literate than a farmer as far as the issue of farming is concerned. And C, to Mr. Saldana's point on, or anyone who's watching this broadcast, farmers' protest has been increasing. Government has been trying every dirty trick in the book to end this protest, but each move has been backfiring. And people are now, farmers are not dependent on national media, they're dependent on mobile phones. And I'm part of those WhatsApp and Facebook and Telegram groups. And I can tell you the kind of energy and the kind of meticulous planning that's going on for months to come is something to watch out for. And we all are here. We are not leaving our social media platforms. We can maybe meet again in the month of June. According to me, farmers' protest is here to stay.
Thank you, Sahil, for your views on that. I want to go to Raj, but before I go to Raj, I'm just scared we're going to run out of time and some might have to jump on other Zoom meetings or have other commitments. To all the students and young professionals that have graduated within the last 3 years, we have a free membership running in IFAMA. So Richard will post in the chat the link that you can follow to register for free. This is only up until the end of March. So please make use of this. It will allow you to attend the IFAMA conference at a subsidized fee. So please register. Registration is for free for students and young professionals. So Raj, I want to ask about the attractiveness of the farming industry given these protests. I mean, obviously this has been international news now. So I'm wondering how attractive is the agricultural sector for youngsters to head to the agricultural sector. And Richard, if you can also moderate the chat on this, because I would like some of our Indian students that are participants to also comment on this. And then also the attractiveness of foreign investments, because I think everyone is wondering what's going to happen with operations on farms, with farmers not being there, crops that need to be harvested. Some of these crops need to be exported. So just the attractiveness of the industry to attract youngsters to the industry, and then also the attractiveness for foreign investments and those other things.
So Melissa, that's two questions rolled into one. So I personally like the young people. I will respond to that. But first, let me take the one on foreign investment and attractiveness of the agriculture. When you talk about agriculture as a sector, it's a very, very large industry in terms of the related areas which, have to do with agriculture. Now, the first thing which will come into your mind, because you're relating it to the farming protest, is are there going to be companies which are going to be investing in farming in India? Then let me, put certain things to rest. Globally, capital does not move internationally so much as far as farming is concerned. There are corporates which are not moving. If you say that there are en masse corporates in the US who are investing in, let's say, in Russia, it's not happening. So capital doesn't move so much. Yes, there are some European companies which might be investing in land in Russia and farming over there, or some American companies which have gone to Brazil. but it's not in, there's not a huge fund of capital movement which happens in the farming sector. Even when it moves, and when you look at countries which have small scaled farming, you will find that there is nothing which moves into those kind of countries. So a classic example of that would be China. China is very similar to India in terms of size of holdings are same. So the size of holdings in India is very fragmented. The size of holding in China is fragmented. So you don't see international capital moving into the farming as a sector. But having said that, let's look at, what is allowed. So let me just read out, what is allowed as far as farming is, agriculture is concerned in India. Now, 100% foreign direct investment is allowed in floriculture, in horticulture, in development of seeds, in animal husbandry, vegetables and mushrooms, and agriculture and allied services. That is what is allowed. So those things are, is something that the rules allow. Now, every food processing. So you large companies in the world sitting, and they've been sitting here for a very, very long time. Why do they sit here? Because of the sheer size of the attractiveness of the market. They have always been here because it's a very big market to cater to, and those who are not here would like to be here. So whether it's food chains or whether it is food processors, you see them making inroads over here. If you look at agriculture services, you find that is a new thing which is coming up, and especially platform-led agriculture services or ag tech. And you find a lot of foreign capital moving in through, investing in startups. And that is happening in a big way in India right now. I'm very encouraged by what I've seen in the last couple of years in terms of ag tech really taking up, and basically foreign venture capital supporting all that. And also some amount of it going into agriculture machinery. So there is also some amount of this going into agriculture machinery. Between April 2000 to 2019, so that's about, we are talking about 9.41 billion of FDI had moved into food processing. So this is just to give you some numbers that there is some amount of. Now, if you look at what is the FDI, I don't have it for agriculture, but during the protest, which is, started sometime in, let's say not just the protest, during the COVID times, April to August, the FDI flow into India was 35.73 billion. This just to give you some numbers that while the farmer agitation is relevant and the protest is relevant, but anybody who's investing will not just look at one aspect of things, will look at the entire macro picture and see how does business get impacted or doesn't get impacted by this issue in ag. So my sense is it has no impact as far as foreign direct investment is concerned, because I don't see the connections, and you also see that the foreign direct investments are happening. So coming to the second question that you had about young people, how with all these farmer protests, are the young people going to be, encouraged into coming into farming? So first of all, let me tell you, this is a universal problem. What is the universal problem? Average age of farmers worldwide is 60 plus. This is not unique to, one country. It's all over the world. You go to US, you go to Europe, you go to Brazil, you go anywhere, you will have this as an issue, where more and more young people are not getting into farming because they feel that, the risk return of farming is just not making sense. It's a different kind of a lifestyle. It means, completely different living away on the land, everything away from everything else. And this is not, the young people want more out of life than what their forefathers needed. And therefore you find people not moving in. So having said that, that's more a global issue. I see two phases of agriculture in India. One is the traditional farming, which is the subsistence kind of a farming. And there it is going to be very difficult to attract young talent into that unless farm incomes change drastically and young people find that it makes sense to go back into farming. And there are lots of examples of that where, a family may have, a couple of siblings, and maybe, you know, except for one who stays back to look at the land, everybody else has migrated to the city to look at alternate jobs, because subdividing it over generations, it does not make commercial sense to farm anymore. It is just for family consumptions that farming is continuing. And a bulk of agriculture, Indian agriculture, is like that. So the question, the moot point here is, do we want more people in farming or do we want less people in farming? Let me just give you some examples. 42% of Indian population is dependent on agriculture. 42%. How does this compare with the US, which is also a large, you know, agriculture, not just a producer, but also an exporter? It's 2% of their, less than 2% of their population is dependent on agriculture. You could also say, Raj, the land size of holding in US is too big and it's a completely different kind of farming. So therefore you cannot compare US with what's happening in India, in which case I would point out to China, where the size of the holding is small, as it is in India. The population size is similar, both the countries. And the agriculture population, which depends on agriculture in China, is 23% as compared to 42% for us. So the traditional form of agriculture, it makes sense if we, you know, get into more automation, more mechanization, and less people dependent, less labor dependent, like it is. And even on small size of land, it is possible, like the Chinese have done, like the Israelis have done. You see some of the technology on small farms, cutting edge, coming from those countries. And those are things that we can look at, you know, we can adopt. If you look at where are the young people going? So you look at the platform-based economy that I was talking about, agriculture platforms that I'm talking about, allied services, startups. These are all very young people who are coming in. I mean, I'm very surprised when I came back here to India a couple of years ago and I see that people are leaving, you know, they have education in IIT, which is the premium engineering college, or they have done management in IIM, which is the premier MBA school in India, and they've left those institutions. You ask them, what are you doing? Said, we are running a dairy farm. And it's not one. There are so many examples like this of young people operating dairy farms. So there is a lot of young people who are already into, you know, this kind of agriculture. And it's a modern way of doing agriculture. They're not doing what the forefathers did as far as dairy farming is concerned. They're changing the dairy farming practices. Also, what I talked about, the ag tech, that's a new area. So those are all being led by young people.
Thank you very much for
I'll be
those
happy
comments,
to take
Raj.
any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to cross over to Richard, and then I think we need to wrap up. We're about 5 minutes over, so I don't want us to lose more participants before we have some final thoughts. Richard, what's happening in the chat? Is there any questions at this point?
Thank you very much for the time, guys, and thank you for passing this over to me. We've had a very interesting conversation in the chat, and I would like to let us know that this is non-political and we should calm down. Thank you for the engagement we've had anyways. So I have a couple of questions for a lot of people here, and I'm just going to read through them. And please, you should take note of your questions so we don't have to come back to this. And the first one is for Mr. Sahil, and it goes thus. Do you expect the strength of the farmers' movement to be a risk to planting and production in the growing seasons? Mr. Sahil, it says, do you expect the strength of the farmers' movement to be a risk to planting and production in the growing season? And I have another one for, excuse me. Hold on, please. Yeah, I've got another one from Mr. Raj. It says, how practical is MSP? I think this is an open-ended question, so anybody can answer this. Mr. Sahil, you can answer it if you want. How practical is MSP? Are all corporates bad? And what are the solutions you would prefer? I've got some other question for Raj, and it says, has the absence of land reforms worsened the challenges of rural farmers?
Sorry, can
Did you get
repeat
that?
Richard, I didn't hear that question.
Yes. Has the absence of land reforms worsened the challenges of rural farmers? And I've got another question for Mr. Sahil. and it says, who is sponsoring the farmers' protests? I've also got some other questions for Mr. Vijay, and it says, what advice will you give to farmers to address the current water issues? So thank you very much for all of these questions. I think we can start with Mr.
Can I?
Sahil.
Okay.
Thanks, Richard.
So-
And Mr.
so to-
Sahil, I think let's start with you, and then we head over to Raj, and then we do Vijay.
Okay. So two questions. First is because the farmers are protesting, the concern is would this impact the output that the farmers are supposed to give us for this season? And then for that, there is a rotational policy which has been implemented by those who are protesting, where half of the farmers, where farmers are now taking turns to return to their villages um, uh, and carry on with their harvesting activity. And the others who are free right now, who do not have to be necessarily present in the villages, they are right now at the protesting site. So they are taking turns to ensure that they are able to carry on with the agriculture work that they are supposed to, that they are able to produce food so that all of us here in the country can eat over the next few months. And at the same time, they're ensuring that they remain present at the protest sites. In fact, several last meetings of Samyukt Kisan Morcha, that is United Farmers Front, this was one of the main concerns raised by everyone, because this is right now the most challenging phase for farmers' protest. Winters had its own challenge where farmers had to survive out in the open without any much help. Summers are going to be another challenge, but that is being taken care of because coolers and even air conditioners have arrived. But currently, the problem is of harvesting season, where farmers have to pick whether they stay at the farmers' protest site or whether they go back. An issue that was there at around January 29th, when the government forcefully tried to evict farmers and failed miserably at doing so, many of the farmers had returned to their villages to carry on with their farming activities and or to also look for other activities. And they had left, and the number of protesters at that particular farmers' protest site had gone below than what they were expecting to be. And that's why police saw that as an opportunity to do a crackdown, but then it failed overnight. They don't want to be in that situation anymore. And that's why they are now coming up with this plan of taking turns where a part of the village remains at home in their farms, and also because there is that kind of unity and that kind of brotherhood among farmers, what the farmers are also doing is that one farmer is looking after the farm of another farmer, and that is also happening. So you are going to find all these stories once you actually are on the farmers protest side. So they have got that sorted. One. The other question was about funding. Well, this has been the favorite ploy even of the government all this while they are trying to delegitimize the movement. And let me clear it up. I have seen since day one, farmers are funding this farmers protest. Villages in Punjab have given all that they have in their savings to just make sure that people are able to get food. I know for a fact that several farmers have even taken a loan just to ensure that they are able to give something to farmers protest. That's what's happening. Women I've spoken to, they have sold their gold ornaments just to raise funds. These are female farmers who form a very important part of India's agriculture sector. They have done that. Apart from that, similar tactics have also been seen in the state of Haryana, and we are now seeing that happening in Western Uttar Pradesh as well. Apart from that, there are good organizations like Khalsa Aid and several other NGOs who have made it a point that they provide free food. And the Sikh community particularly is known for its large-heartedness, where they distribute free food throughout the year, not just in India, but all across the globe. So it's in their culture to provide free food and free water. So that's being taken care of by some religious as well as NGO sectors as well. Apart from that, because farmers protest has, and my battery might run out at any point of time, because farmers protest is happening at Delhi borders, what we are also seeing is a lot of affluent sections of Delhi, which also have roots in the state of Punjab, they have made it a point that they need to visit these protest sites every Saturday, every Sunday, every weekend, whenever they find time. I have so many friends who are Sikhs, who are Punjabis, and they just go to these protest sites almost on a rotational basis, almost every weekend, just to do seva. Seva translates to service, just to do service for the goodness, because they feel that what farmers are doing right. So that's where the funding is coming in from. Of course, if you listen to the government, if you listen to, as I said, pro-government anti-citizens, Godi media, our national challenge, which I think Mr. Vijay Sardana, I just going through his Twitter timeline, he has been consuming and participating in those debates a lot. So if you go by these channels, this is money is coming in from terror group wings and extreme ideologies, but that is not the fact. The fact is, again, Mr. Sardana, please come over and have a cup of tea and see for yourself how farmers from various villages, they are just giving everything that they have because they feel that it's do or die. That if it's not going to be this time, that this is the last opportunity that they have to save agriculture. And that's where the funding is coming in from the farmers primarily, from self-help groups, from NGOs, and also from Good Samaritans.
Thank you, Sahil, for those comments to the questions. I think the participants appreciate that they can be part of the discussion. Raj, if you can answer your questions, please.
Yes, I'll take up the first question on the MSP being practical or not. I think I dwelled a lot on it, saying that at a point of time when we adopted the MSP, when India was going through the food crisis, it made sense not to have any quantitative restrictions. But we have all seen how the MSP has led to issues which have a huge societal cost. And therefore, there is high time that we started thinking of some kind of a quantitative restriction. I'm also reminded of what Melissa commented, saying that when you start thinking of farmer livelihoods, it's not an easy answer. It's not just a straight yes and no, black and white. You have to think about farmer livelihoods. And therefore, I'm going to put across three things that I feel will help. And my suggestions are as follows. First is to have an online transparent bidding system where the government puts out a core quantity and says, this is what we're going to buy in the season. Why does it need to do that? Because we have a public distribution system. We still need to feed the poor people. And therefore, the government still needs to buy. MSP is here to stay. MSP is not going anywhere. And the APMC markets is here to stay. They will not go anywhere. They will stay. Now, having said that, the whole thing will work on a transparent system whereby whoever registers first gets assurance of the procurement of quantity that they are registering for. The way it should be, the quantity should be registered, should be on the basis of your ownership document and any contract that you have, toll contracts that you have, so that you don't tend to overbid. You can only bid as a farmer, not as a trader, but as a farmer or whatever you do. So that is one suggestion. Beyond the core, once the core has been reached, the farmers can still go on and register themselves, but the government is not going to give them an assurance that we will procure anybody once our core quantity is finished. The government, however, later on can decide to buy from the second lot if the first lot of core quantity is not supplied for whatever reason, quality is not adequate, or there is a weather vagaries and didn't happen for whatever reason, and then they can go to the second lot. Or if the government wants to procure more than what it had initially thought of. So that's one solution that I have. The second one I'm thinking of is for water stressed areas. And this is both Punjab and Haryana. I want to put on two things that I want to talk about. One is positive motivation and one is negative. Let me start off with the negative ones. Because of all that I talked about, depletion of fresh water and things like that, we have to stop the farmers growing crops like rice and wheat in these regions. And how do you prevent them growing rice and wheat? You can say that, okay, you are free to do all this, but if you do it, we are taking away all your subsidies. So you're not getting any fertilizer subsidy. You're not getting free electricity. You're not getting free water. You're not going to game the system by getting everything free, and then you feel that there is no cost and your job is only to do damage to the society. So take away all subsidies if people continue to grow it, water intensive crops in areas where there is a shortage of water. But it's important that they have a livelihood. So what is the livelihood? Now, Punjab is one area where the industrial revolution happened because of industrial parks which were formulated all through Punjab. Industrial focal points were built. Similarly, I'm suggesting let there be food parks in this entire region, whether it is Haryana, whether it is in UP, whether it is in Punjab, where you have food parks which could be, a juicing unit, a pulping unit, different kind of crops which are required. And what the farmers then do is, because of the food processing zone, they start, cultivating different kind of crops, because there is a ready requirement, because factories are being put up for those kind of crops. I also think that as a positive support, the government needs to start training the farmers in production of alternate crops. So instead of growing rice and wheat, start growing vegetables, start getting into, instead of traditional farming, start looking at poly sheds, look at green sheds for farming. So look at alternate things that you want to do. Look into hydroponics, look at vertical farming, look at different things. So that's second thing that I would like to suggest. The third thing that I would like to talk about is crop insurance. Crop insurance today is based on weather vagaries, and if there are weather related issues, then you can get an insurance from the insurance company. The government has started this. There has been crop insurance for a long time, but the new government has started something on the government on the crop insurance. There's been a lot of focus. Is the crop insurance has its own issues, but I would like to suggest a fundamental change. Instead of weather vagaries, the crop insurance should be more about covering the variable cost. If the variable cost is not being achieved, then that is when the insurance kicks in. US has something like that, where if the farmer is supposed to make a certain amount of money, if it doesn't make that amount of money, is when the subsidy from the government comes in. So this would be something similar. However, how do you track, the variable cost? Which means the farmer portal has to be the source of all kind of investments which is going into the farm. This will make the entire system transparent. It will ensure that there is best practices, and it will help in improving the system. So this is what I feel could be 2 or 3 different things which could help in not only, taking care of what the government wants to do, but also addressing the livelihood issue that Melissa raised, which is equally important. And then the last one was about land reforms and whether that is impacting what is happening today. Let me tell you, land reforms in India is as long as the Indian civilization. Land reforms goes back to about more than 1,000-year-old, when Sher Shah Suri was the first Afghan king who started the land reforms, and then Akbar after that. So there is a history of land reforms in India. It has been happening for a very long time. So for thousands of years, you have to understand that people are very, very emotive about land in India, because land is seen as a source of wealth, and it gets passed on from father to son to to grandchild, and that's how the subdivision of land happens. So there is a limit to what you can do with land reforms. Having said that, I just want to point out one thing. A lot of my panel members kept talking about Bihar having a problem, and APMC markets was removed. I just want to tell them the first state in India which accepted the Land Ceiling Act was Bihar. It was the first state which implemented the land reforms. So Bihar is a complex issue. It is the farmers being poor have not just got to do with APMC market. There is a whole lot of other things which lead to it, whether it could be irrigation facility, poor quality of seeds, land sizes, dependence of rainfall. There are lots of things. So there is a very broad generalization when you say that, Bihar farmers are poor because of APMC. Anytime there is a crisis, there's not a single reason which, you can identify, especially in something complex like agriculture. There are multiple things which could impact why that has happened. So I personally don't think the land reforms would make so much of a difference.
Thank you, Raj, for your very detailed responses to those questions. We appreciate that. And also we appreciate the 3 points you mentioned going forward. Those are definitely important things that the government will have to consider if they are to grow the farming sector and the agricultural sector at large. Vijay, I'll allow you to respond to your question.
Yes, I think it was a fantastic discussion. A couple of questions, and it's important that it is not a political discussion, so we should keep those points out. As for, I'll just touch upon two important points here. Point was on then what is the way forward for the farmers? Before I touch upon that's a question, I just want to add one interesting question came is that who is funding and what is happening there? Let me tell that I'm from Punjab. My family still lives in Punjab. We know how funding is raised. I don't want to go into detail because a lot can be projected without knowing the facts. See, what is important here is that end of the day, what is looking at is the agriculture as a vibrant economic activity. In last 70 years, I always say in my writings, you can go and search on my blogs and also Twitter accounts. I always say that in last 70 years in India, agriculture was more of a political activity instead of economic activity. Because all the decisions related to agriculture were based on political considerations, not on economic justification.
Vijay, you're not audible. Yeah. Yeah, you're audible now.
Okay.
Go on, Vijay.
So my asking is that in India, in last 70 years, agriculture was treated more of a political activity instead of an economic activity. The reason was very simple because India is a democracy and farmers are a big vote bank. And all political parties looked at agriculture and especially farming community as a vote bank instead of an economic entity. And that's why all policies were virtually like offering doles to farmers instead of improving efficiency and productivity. Let me give you a live example of Punjab itself. In last 10 years, the productivity of wheat has increased only by 2.7% in Punjab. Just 2.7% in 10 years. Whereas the minimum support price, so-called MSP, has increased by 102%. What this indicates? This indicates, in a very simple term, we are becoming a high-cost economy. Let me give you a reference point, which I did a calculation. Today, in case of wheat, we are 58.78% more expensive than the world market. In maize, we are 102% more expensive than the world market. In barley, we are 51% more expensive. In soybean, we are 58.9% more expensive. In case of sugar, we are 40% more expensive. In case of mustard seeds or rapeseed, whatever we call it, 55.47%. And in rice, we are only competitive by 11%. Now, this is of the data which I compiled based on the average annual number of 2020. Now, last couple of weeks, commodity prices have changed, which will again have its own political implication. What is happening in India today? MSP formula, which Government of India is using and all people are promulgating as MSP is required, is one of the most disastrous formula in any economic sense. What it says, cost plus margins. It means more the cost of production, higher the MSP. Efficiency is not considered, quality is not considered in MSP formula. It means if I'm increasing my cost of production, my MSP should go up. Efficient farmers, if I divide this on a geographical basis, that okay, let the state government decide MSP, then if I go with cost basis, the low cost producer should get less MSP and high cost producer should get high MSP. What is this logic? There is no factor of productivity. There is no factor of quality, and that is why we are ruining our natural resources. Our water table is going down drastically. Our soil health is ruining fastest possible in the world, and we are claiming that we are becoming agriculture economy. Indian experts And scientists from Punjab has warned, just go down to the internet and search. Punjab, the way we are working, if we do not change our behavior in agriculture, in 5 to 10 years, Punjab will become desert. Why I'm saying this? I am working with farmers in Punjab. I do oilseed production in Punjab with the farmers. And I can tell you that every year we are losing water table by 50 centimeters. 50 centimeter a year. Every alternate year, farmer has to go down and deeper into tube wells to get the water out. And this is the tragedy because of wrong costing formula. Second important point we have to always keep in mind is we were exporting 45 million tons. I'm just giving an example. 45 lakh tons or 4.5 million tons of maize in 2015. This year, because of even COVID, we have reduced our maize, or we are forced to reduce our export only to neighboring countries, only 0.4 million tons. On the other hand, my same poultry farmers, those who are living in the same villages, I'm also advisor to Poultry Federation of India. They are demanding to Government of India that your defective costing is making us incompetitive. We cannot face the competition. So maize farmers are demanding higher MSP. In the same village, poultry farmer is saying, give me a better cost-effective raw material for feeding my birds. This is the tragedy which India is going through. Now, what is happening in this process? Population of India is going up. Quality of land and water table is going down. Per capita land available in India as of today is only 0.1 hectare. We have almost 140 million hectare agriculture land, and our population is touching almost 1,400 million. So we only have 0.1 hectare land per capita for all agriculture activities, starting from food to fiber to dairy to whatever you name it. Everything. It means we are heading for a crisis. We have to accept this. So what is the way forward? We have to look at it. We have to, agriculture reform is one step. This is not end of it. This is not going to give the problem to all the solutions. It is one step that more money from consumer spending should reach the farmer. That is one step. Second, we have to bring better technologies. Minute you talk about high productivity and higher technologies, there is another set of lobbying. They say, no, we don't need productivity. We should go for ancient agriculture like, zero budget agriculture and whatnot, because farmers should make more money. The tragedy is that the production is so low that majority of crop farmers keeps it for self-consumption. The market surplus goes down and he has nothing to sell outside to make money for other expenditures. So it is a vicious cycle in which we are entrapped because of various political reasons. Now, why I'm saying this, and this is, now our friend was repeatedly saying Godi media and all farmer leaders. I think, let me read out one single point again from Mr. Darshan Pal, who is a leader of this Sanyukt Morcha farmers group. The Hindu newspaper, I'm sure my friend will not say it is a Godi media. It is again a leftist media. Okay? Those who are against government. What is the writing? There is on 5th March, there is an interview of Mr. Darshan Pal. And 2 days back, before that, I had a detailed TV debate with him that why you do not have a proper calculation before you raise the issue as farmers protest. So what he said in his newspaper interview, I'm just reading a paragraph. I think we should be taking a hard stand on all the issues. For example, on the issue of MSP, what I think is that we do not demand. It is our movement so intensely that it is so much in detail. We should try to get all these things about our issues in detail so that leadership level, everybody raises the understanding of the demand and how much we can get. And what he is saying is we should have done our internal assessment of our demands. We have raised the expectation of farmers so much, now we cannot go back home because we have misled them. Our calculations were wrong. We raised the issue that we will get you moon out of the government decree. Now we know it is not possible. We are in fix. How we can go and tell the farmer this is not doable? This is the tragedy of this agriculture protest, what is happening today. So my way of looking at is today, Farmer leaders need a respectable exit from a wrongly conceived protest. On the other side, we have to relook at agriculture, not in piecemeal, but as a holistic way. Future of agriculture in India is bright because our population will continue to increase. Demand for food and agriculture and all items will increase. Future of agriculture is bright. I'm not sure about farmers. Unless they organize and change their way of working, I don't think that individual farmer will be able to sustain the pressures of economy. And this is where we need a serious, open socio-political debate in the society, how we should reorient agriculture. The way farmer leaders and politicians are again pushing the farmer into corner, this is another putting India backward by 10 to 20 years, because this mistrust of reforms will take time to get rid of it. These people will fade out. All these oldies farmer leaders will no more in the world. The youth will crimp. The youth will suffer. So my request is to the rural youth, the kids of the farmer, get up and understand economics, get out of politics, talk hard numbers, look at economics, demand your rights. You have funding for infrastructure, use that, upgrade your skills, upgrade your technology, talk to consumers, what consumer wants, do what market is saying, not what politicians are saying or what leaders are saying. Listen to market. Market is the only place which can give you sustainable profit. Nobody else, no government, no leader can ever give you sustainable profit. So understand your agriculture, learn about agriculture, be logical, be scientific, accept the facts, don't go into illusion. That is what my message to the youth is. Future of agriculture is bright because we need more and more food. Per capita income is increasing, our population is increasing, so demand is increasing. And that is the important positive sign in all the crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay, and thank you for that positive note on which you ended this. So we had a 2-hour discussion on this, and I think we've only scratched the surface, but at some point we need to call it a day. I think it's quite late in India. So thank you so much, Raj, and thank you, Vijay, for your inputs today. Also, thank you to Sahil. His phone died, so he left us, unfortunately. I think this discussion is something that we will continue to have, and we'll also continue to watch the news. And I think a lot of us that's on the in the audience are economists, or we have a love for agriculture, or we are working in the agricultural and food sector. So this is something that is close to our hearts. And we will keep on hoping and praying that things go for the better for the farmers, and that there is a common ground to be found between government and the farmers, and that everyone returns to their farms healthy, and that they can continue doing what they love. So on behalf of the IFAMA Young Board, I would just like to thank everyone for participating. Thank you for participating in the chats and for the questions that you raised. Thank you for participating in our first Young Board discussion series. We hope that this is the first of many. I would also like to thank the panelists again for their valuable inputs in x-raying the underlying issues of the India farmer crisis. So just a reminder again, if you are a student or a young professional, please head on to the IFAMA website where you will see this flyer that is currently being shared. Remember that we have free membership up until the end of March. So this will allow you to benefit from the network that is IFAMA. You will also be able to join the various regional chapters if you are a member. So we have chapters across the globe. If you are an Indian young professional or an Indian student and you would like to become part of the young professionals group of IFAMA, please drop us an email. Richard, please just add our email address to the chat. So you're welcome to drop us an email. We are always looking for young professionals and students to join us in what we are trying to do. And we want to also continue inviting students and young professionals to these discussions, because we feel that we are the future, and the globe is ours to protect and also to nurture so that we can grow food for food security. So thank you again for participating and for the discussions and for joining us tonight or today. I hope you have a good one, whether it's a good evening or a good day. Thank you.